Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson, is a book that kick-started the modern environmentalist movement. This book was not only part of the movement, it was crucial to its development. Rachel Carson was leading the charge, providing the base, and being the martyr for it. While its points today may feel dull because of our familiarity with how our actions affect the environment, when it was published in 1962, any reference to environmental damage caused by man was unheard of to the average American. Rachel Carson was born in 1909 and graduated from Johns Hopkins University in 1932 with a degree in zoology. She had previously studied English in college and continued to publish in the student newspaper after she switched to biology and zoology. Although she ended up working in the U.S. Bureau of Fisheries for most of her life, she always had a heart for writing, as she published 3 other books, even winning a National Book Award before writing Silent Spring. In 1957, the United States government started an eradication program of the gypsy moth that airily distributed DDT indiscriminately across public and private land. Coming out of World War II, the United States was looking for ways to utilize technologies that originated from the war. DDT and other chemical pesticides are one example. DDT is a toxic pesticide that, throughout the 1950s and 60s, was pumped into the air to kill any and all pests, without regard for its effects on other animals and humans. When Rachel Carson heard of this program, she was inspired to begin researching immediately, and she dedicated her next book to the dangers of synthetic pesticides. She sought to create something that would change the world and reveal the truth behind pesticides, the inaction of the government, and the human effect on the environment. Silent Spring is a wonderful nonfiction book due to Rachel Carson's ability to provide specific details that prove precisely what she wants to say, as well as her ability to explain the most complicated of biological processes in the simplest of ways, and how she uses structure to develop her argument throughout the book. All of these choices help her effectively communicate her message that the effects of human action on the environment, specifically pesticides, are more than we realize and more than anyone is willing to tell us about. Her argument leaves the reader with an understanding that is informed and newly aware of their environmental surroundings. Rachel Carson's research for this book was nothing short of thorough. She researched and wrote her book in 4 years, and because the book was sponsored by the Audubon Naturalist Society, writing became her job. Carson's research is perfectly dense and meaningful. There is no dragging on of complicated biological processes or any insignificant evidence. She is concise and her arguments are effective. In a section where she talks about how aquatic life has been devastated in Yellowstone due to the aerial sprayings for budworms, a specific moth larva that targets coniferous trees, the illustrative imagery combined with scientific references make the connection between synthetic pesticides and aquatic devastation clear and obvious, even to the most ignorant of readers. Always, the pattern of death assumed a characteristic shape: the smell of DDT over the forests, an oil film on the water surface, dead trout along the shoreline. All fish analyzed, whether taken alive or dead, had stored DDT in their tissues. Even by the end of the second summer, after spraying, only meager quantities of aquatic insects had re-established themselves. Game fish had been reduced by 80%. After this, she highlights how the havoc caused by the spraying has been in vain. Spraying at the rate of a pound of DDT to the acre posed a serious threat. Moreover, control of the budworm had not been achieved, and many areas were scheduled for respraying. This book is full of examples such as this one that show the cycle of spraying, mass wildlife death, brief and minor concern, insect recovery, and spraying again. This cycle has been wreaking clearly visible but unseen destruction on our surroundings. Silent Spring is incredibly dense with example after investigation, after research paper, after interview. But there is no redundancy. Everything is new and provides more support for the lawsuit against society that Carson is building. The ultimate work of energy production is accomplished not by a specialized organ, but in every cell of the body. A living cell, like a flame, burns fuel to produce the energy on which life depends. In the 13th chapter of her book, Carson describes to the reader how the mitochondria creates energy within the cell, and how pesticides work to suffocate these small burning fires. She slowly walks the reader through how the process works for this new and generally unknown science. Cellular respiration was discovered in 1951, and there was very little that was publicly understood about it, as it had not yet been included in high school biology curriculums. Rachel Carson is aware that her audience is ignorant to this process, so she writes in a way that teaches the audience in the same way that a teacher or college professor would, using simple, understandable words. It is now known that the mitochondria are tiny packets of enzymes, arranged in precise and orderly array on walls and partitions. The mitochondria are the powerhouses in which most of the energy-producing reactions occur. It is here that oxidation is completed. It is here that enormous amounts of energy are released. Carson has the teaching ability of a teacher, the scholarly knowledge of a professor, and the writing ability of an experienced novelist. She does not burden her work with the typical scientific jargon that makes scientific journals incomprehensible to anyone outside the field. When she does use scientific terms, Carson meticulously explains what they are in the simplest words possible, and she ensures that when she mentions them later, the reader will remember and understand them. Sometimes this explanation slows the book down significantly, but that is better than the alternative of being confused and not understanding what is happening. There was a strange stillness. The few birds seen anywhere were moribund. They were trembled violently and could not fly. It was a spring without voices. Only silence lay over the fields and woods and marshes. No witchcraft, no enemy action had silenced the rebirth of new life in this stricken world. The people had done it themselves. Silent Spring is split into 17 chapters, each having a unique focus that is crucial in building Carson's argument. Carson starts the book with a glimpse into the future from which the book gets its namesake. A spring without birdsong, because the wildlife has all been sterilized and killed by a strange blight, which we as the readers understand as synthetic pesticides. She then moves to her reasons for writing the book, and in the second chapter, titled The Obligation to Endure, she explains that she is not against the use of pesticides to kill pests, but she is against the scale at which they're used, and the manner in which chemical companies unconsensually sacrifice lives they are not responsible for. From here, Carson starts to bring the evidence to the witness stand, and examines through 7 chapters the effects of pesticides and other human actions have on animals such as birds, fish, insects, and livestock. Through the first section of this book, the attitudes of those distributing pesticides has been filled with ignorance and a so what feeling. Their perspective is that animals are not people, so if what makes us comfortable kills them, then so be it. In the second section of the book, Rachel Carson begins to describe how the effects of pesticides continue to inch closer and closer to home. She includes chapters that describe how pets are affected, how human cells are affected, and how pesticides increase cancer risk. She also provides examples that would make any person concerned for their safety or the safety of their family tremble. Insecticide residues have been recovered from human milk in samples tested by Food and Drug Administration scientists. This means that the breastfed human infant is receiving small but regular additions to the load of toxic chemicals building up in his body. The dangers of pesticides have come to the most vulnerable individuals of our society, our children, who can do nothing but drink breast milk contaminated by pesticides that their mothers did not consent to be poisoned by. The most moving part of her work is the final 2 chapters of this book. We stand now where 2 roads diverge. But unlike in Robert Frost's familiar poem, they are not equally fair. The road we have long been traveling is deceptively easy, but at its end lies disaster. The other fork of the road offers our last, our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of our Earth. Chapter 16, titled The Rumblings of an Avalanche, explains what life would look like for future generations if we continue our path of extreme pesticide use. Carson cycles back to the silent spring that she described in the beginning of the book. She then provides an alternative route, in which we use natural, biological remedies to the plagues of pests that make us uncomfortable. She provides no conclusion to her book other than the simple view that controlling nature is bound by arrogance, and it is impossible as we are only a single part of nature. After publishing Silent Spring, Rachel Carson received national attention from environmentalists, the media, politicians, and representatives of very large chemical companies. She received support and praise from those with similar views. But chemical companies accused her of libel and attempted to discredit her for any reasons, ranging from her being a woman to her fight with cancer during the writing and publication of Silent Spring. Rachel Carson lived for about 2 years after publishing her book, and was under attack the entire time. If only she could see the effects her book has had. Legislation passed after her death included the illegalization of DDT, the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Clean Air and Water Acts. Education on the health of the environment has also become more popular. Today, College Board offers an AP Environmental Science course, which credits Rachel Carson with starting the modern environmentalist movement. And this is how I heard of this book. My teacher talks about Rachel Carson as if he has a crush on her, so I had to see what this book was talking about. Reading this book has changed how I think about my actions and their effects on the environment. Due to this book, coupled with taking AP Environmental Science, my actions have become healthier for the environment. I have bought myself a recycling bin, I refuse to use herbicides on my garden, and I chose to deal with a pest problem by introducing more ladybugs into my garden rather than using pesticides. I highly encourage reading Silent Spring because of its effects on the United States and the environment. It is an incredible book because of the precise evidence that Rachel Carson uses to explain the undeniable effects of pesticides. Rachel Carson teaches unfamiliar topics to readers rather than leaving them to their own research, which I really appreciated. Finally, the structure of the book makes sense organizationally, and its ending truly brings everything together. After reading this book, I feel like my understanding of pesticides and how humans interact with the environment is properly informed, and my awareness of my surroundings has taken a new lens. It is our alarming misfortune that so primitive a science has armed itself with the most modern and terrible weapons, and that in turning them against the insects, it has also turned them against the earth.